Good Monday evening to you all, and welcome to another Lounge Lime. This week, our long overdue interview with Dr. Deborah Hickling-Gordon, Culture and Communication in Development Strategist in the Global South. I must say to our guest this evening that she is by far perhaps the most hardworking cultural and communications I was about to say expert. I can say that she doesn't call herself that, but specialist when it comes to doing research in the field. I have noticed this for years, and it really is a pleasure having Deborah here as we just try and shed some more light on what is happening in the cultural and creative industries in Jamaica and where we think it's going to go. Deborah, welcome to the Lounge Lime.
Good
I should
morning,
say
good
welcome
afternoon,
back to Lounge Lime. We
evening.
recently had you.
Yes. We had a rousing conversation. That was very interesting. Yeah, good to be here.
So when I met you first, the
Mhm.
first thing I noticed is that you spoke about the little theater and that you were in the little theater as a child. How did
Yes.
that happen?
Well, I grew up in a very cultural and culturally aware home. My grandmother was a piano teacher. She had a studio on Connolly Avenue at 23 Connolly Avenue. So I grew up with five pianos going at the same time around me. But at the time, so we're talking here, she would have started in the 1930s. So anywhere between there and the 1970s, there was a cadre of thespians who kind of maintained a group. People like Norman Ray, people like Pauline Stone Myrie, people like Miss Lou, people like Greta Fowler, and so on. So there was this group of thespians who had these parties, and so they would go from house to house to have these parties. Aunt Lois Kelly Miller. And so I remember the veranda parties with my grandmother. So she would write scores for various things that were happening at the Ward Theatre, which is why it's so dear to my heart. Three generations of Hicklings have performed at the Ward Theatre. And so that's where it started. This group of thespians, so of course, we were always at the theatre. But then my father, in his kind of rebellious phase between going to between school and going to medical school, he became the stage manager for NDTC, and he stayed with them for 15 years. So when I was born, my mother, who is also an artist, put me in a Bankra basket, a real Bankra basket, lined it with cushions because she sewed. And he would take me to the little theater as an infant in the Bankra basket because he had to watch me while she was at JBC or doing the stuff that she was doing. So he would put the Bankra in the chairs, and all of the dancers of the time, Auntie Barbara, all of them would spend their time watching watching this baby in the Bankra when they were not rehearsing. So that was my first introduction to the little theater. Um, and then from there, because my family has always been involved in theater and music and communication and film and television and all the various areas, I grew up there. I did two pantomimes or three pantomimes at the little theater, starting at the ward. It was the same year that we had stopped working at the ward because was being closed to be fixed. So I probably did the last pantomime at the ward, now that I think about it. So that was my introduction to theater. But because my mother was also in broadcasting, I have this memory of coming from school one day, and I would go to JIS where she was as a high school at Queens. And I was impatient. I wanted to go home. And she said, okay, here's what you're going to do. You're going to write a radio feature. And she showed me how. And I wrote it, and she showed me how to listen to the thing and cut the sound bite and so on. And it was an interview that she had done with an artist called David Dunn. And I don't know, you know Charlie Lanneman of
I
RTR. He was engineer at JIS at the time, and he took me into the studio and he showed me how to do the voiceover, and he showed me how to get it done, and it was a beautiful little feature that they played on JIS. It was great, and I was a high school student, maybe about fourth or fifth form, and that was my introduction to media, and that was it. That was it. I was sold, completely
Wow.
sold.
By the way, for those international listeners, Deborah, I want to just say to them that the Jamaica Information Service is what she refers to as the JIS.
And the Jamaica
But you
broadcast.
know, it's interesting you say come is
Was
JBC.
good. Mhm.
You've you've aged yourself. I wanted to ask you something, like you mentioned high school, you didn't say which high school, but the
Yes, I
question I
went to
really want to
Queen,
ask is, oh, the Queen School. Oh,
the
I know some
Queen's.
other people go to the Queen School. We'll talk about that soon.
Okay.
But was there, so your father, Dr. Freddie Hicklin, can you name
Mhm.
your mother for me? I like naming our
Pamela
people. Name your
Gordon
mom.
Hickling. Winsome Pamela Gordon Hickling, but everybody knew her as Pam.
Okay, so Pamela Gordon Hicklin, Pam, and Dr.
Mhm.
Freddie Hicklin are your parents. It
Mhm.
feels like two worlds, creative, psychiatry. How did that kind of shape what you think you've become?
Well, let's just say that they met at the Edna, at the Philip Sherlock Center of the Creative Arts. She was the secretary at the Philip Sherlock Center, and he was a med student, and the two of them apparently fell fast and furiously in love. Um, I suppose growing up around the arts and music and being exposed to everything from classical music till when my father had his, kind of Rastafarian enlightenment to, the world of third world, going to those rehearsals and being a part of the huge explantations movement, being a part of my mother's insistence that we went to dance class at Edna or explored pottery or painting. Or my brother is a prolific painter. He does some really beautiful work. I couldn't help but to be grounded in the arts and entertainment and culture, because for them it was a way of life as opposed to the way that we see culture and entertainment now as an expedient practice. So it kind of in my blood. I couldn't get away from it, Colleen. I even if I tried. So that's pretty much how it happened. Their romance was spawned in the theater,
So
and
I mean,
and it flourished with children and grandchildren now, who are doing very well in their
wow.
respective fields, mostly artistic.
Our
Yeah.
viewers will not forgive me if I don't ask you to explain your father's role with Third World and explantations that you mentioned and just kind of skipped over.
Okay. It was a period of time when Third World was going through a bit of a challenge, right? And they were having some, I guess I would say, identity issues. The crises that come sometimes when artists start to transition from a kind of local space to a global space. And he was called, I think it was Colin Leslie who called him and said he was a psychiatrist, but he also worked in the arts. I said to him, Freddie, why don't you come in and see if you can, work with these guys, if you can kind of help them to get a little grounded. And he came up with this methodology that he had been using called cultural therapy. And he went through and traced, now we're getting academic, he traced a timeline, yeah, that he called a psychohistoriogram, which took us from colonization up to their present day and looked at the relationship between the two and used that material to create a script. Yeah. And that script became a show called Explantations, which I understand. I was little, I wouldn't have been aware at the time. But it there was so much interest in it that the people were snaking down Tom Redcombe Avenue, and when it went to the Oceana around the corner, people were making long lines to go and see Third World performing this in this show, and it's a bit of a landmark activity, landmark performance in Jamaican theatre and music, because it was a little of both. It was well staged. And yeah, so that again, those are early memories of mine that ground me in the work that I do.
And I do think that that project must have worked based on the focus of various members of the third world. But Deborah, it sounds really great when we talk about Jamaica's music history or history in culture and what we've done for the world from this little rock. But what is real? What is real? What is happening on the ground? What has the work been like? I've seen personally some long documents. I've been in some very long meetings. And so I want to go a little bit to your work in cultural policy, what your vision was, or the collective vision of ones you've worked with, and where we are today. Let's reflect a little on that.
Where we are today, well, I think we are in the middle of another transition. So I would say that since independence, we've been through maybe about 2 or 3 forms of transition that are obvious in the music, right? The technology changed and the politics changed, and with it, the music and the culture changed. So we went through a period that I guess and I don't want to get too technical, but we call it the neoliberal period, where things got a little material, very material, materialistic and so on. So we changed from the music of roots and culture to a kind of materialist ethos. And I think we're in a process now where it is trying to regulate itself. And that's one of the things about cultural policy. It's not about dictating what must happen, but it's really about creating a structure within what is happening, where what is happening can itself evolve and thrive. So it's not about bringing a big stick to you must do this, you must do that, but the recognition that in the world of 2025, that there are particular things that are particular trends that we need to be able to follow, even as we maintain our own individual Jamaicanness and the ethos of our music. But we need to kind of remind ourselves of what that ethos is, or rather than look at it as going back to a time, to kind of create for ourselves a Jamaica that we want to see, and to be able to enroll the entire creative community and say to them, ladies and gentlemen, what we want for our children, what we want them to be listening to, what we want them to be watching, how we want to produce it, how we're going to produce it, what do you need to get that production done. And then we create together way forward as to do that. Now, people like Ibo Cooper had been on that road for 30 years. Yeah. So I think we've gone past the place of what we need to do. There's still some people who are stuck in the what we need to do and are still giving prescriptions and still kind of, have things to say about what needs to happen. But I think we've gone past that. I think now at how do we do it? We need to find the methodologies that actually work for us to get there. And I think we've developed an approach that we want to be able to bring to the family of creatives, to say to them, how does this work? How does this work for you? And if you want, I can explain that approach for you. We call it the 5G approach. So it has 5 components. The first one is nurturing greatness. I was yesterday. I told the story at Cocoa Tea celebration of coffee. Coffee was mentored by Cocoa Tea, but he was mentored by her because he saw the greatness in her. He saw something in her. And everywhere you go, I went to Monique College the other day and I saw some vocalists in their choir who were so remarkable. It was, but what happens to them after they leave college? If they don't get a bus or they don't get a break, there's no throughput for them. And so that's the first thing, recognizing greatness and then nurturing it. Yeah, finding the means by which we can nurture it. And one of those means is finding a way that we can actually matriculate natural greatness through a process of development. That's the first one, the first G, greatness. The second one is achieving sustainable goals, matching that greatness with our communities, because we know that most of the people who have made it big have come out of particular communities or are linked with particular communities. The dance hall is originally a community-based activity. The sound system came out of stringing up sounds in communities. So we know that communities are important to us. In present day, the issue of the nine night and the and those community activities that take place are critical to our entertainment scene, round robins and so. So it's about grounding and resetting our culture within their communities. Every community can have a festival. Every parish can have a festival that is unique to them, that represents them, or has some output that is unique to them, or some heritage element. So it's about grounding culture back in communities. Third element is growth. That's the third G. So now, this thing about growth, we think that growth just happens like that, and that we're going to just kind of grow the economy because we say we are. It don't kind of happen like that, and particularly not for cultural and creative industries, which has been deemed informal for so long. And that word informal is a catch word too, because as far as I'm concerned, in emancipation, on the day after emancipation and after apprenticeship, everybody who looked like me and you, Colleen, was a part of the informal economy, right? They were left to their own devices and they were part of the informal economy. So we're talking about not even 200 years since generations of people have been trying to find their ways out of a informal economy, an economy which only came the distinction between formal and informal only kind of became clear in about the 1940s and 50s. So still, 100 and a little bit years we're talking about. That's not a huge amount of time in the life of a country. So we're still working through this issue of formality and informality, right? And that is at the center of what we talk about when we talk about growth. Right? So there are very technical things that need to happen to kind of sensitively move us from informal to formal. And when we talk about informal to formal, there are people who don't wish to be a part of the formal. I mean, people are born in Babylon all the time with regards to the issue of formality and informality. It is really the responsibility of our government in a contemporary time to explain why it's important, for us to kind of, in this time, move in a particular direction. And some of these discussions have to be had. We have to start to deal with the data and the research and all of the things that I've been talking about for a long time. But it's a process, and it's a technical process. And it's a process that doesn't happen in front of cameras. It happens behind cameras. There's a lot of work to be done that is technical. There is a sound technical team at the Ministry of Culture. And many of them know what they are doing and just need to be put in a kind of direction where they get to do what they know needs to be done. Yeah? That's the third one. Fourth one is governance.
As you
Now,
say,
mhm. You want me to? I just finish them up quickly. Fourth one is
no, I want
governance.
you to finish your 5 points.
Yeah,
Yeah.
man. The fourth is governance. And that is really about the issue of setting up the structures that work. We had a National Cultural and Creative Industries Commission. It has not sat for 10 years, Coleen. It was formed and it was representative by nature, which means that the professional organizations that existed at the time were represented on that board, and they sat with the 5 or 6 ministries that had responsibility for areas of cultural and creative industries policy. And in 2016, when the government changed, that ended. It has never sat since. So although things have happened where, places like UNESCO have come in and said we need to have participatory governance, so form a national team, you still have a situation where certain people from the national team are being called to comment on particular things, as opposed to, it's the participatory element of the governance is problematic. So we see three problems with regards to governance. Transparency. We don't think that we're getting enough information about a lot of things in the cultural and creative industries. And when we get it, we get half and piece. And I think, we need to kind of work that through with the adults who are in the cultural and creative industries, who want to know the direction that their sector is taking, because it's their life, right? It's not about, the policymakers. It's about the people who need to move forward. That's transparency. Inclusion. This notion of people feeling. So it's not this thing about I have an open door. That's all well and good, but do people feel that they have access? Do people know where to go? Do they feel as if they can make a telephone call? Can they send an email and be clear that they're going to get a response, even a response that says, I have got your email? There's so many people who are complaining about that. And so systems need to be put in place. There are 2 or 3 things that I have in mind. First of all, there needs to be there needs to be a service center for cultural and creative practitioners. And there needs to be a means by which engagement takes place. And of course, at the policy level, there needs to be the reinstatement of the commission, which was named a council. And that's a whole story. We can talk about that later if you want. And the last one is going global. And what we see is this we want to be able to build cultural and creative industries, and 1 to 4 does that. Now we need to be globally facing. So we need to be able to kind of return to the kind of prominence where our culture, more of our cultural and creative practitioners have a space in the global space. And that means negotiating trade deals. That means doing more cultural diplomacy, opening up more exchanges. Things like linking with Africa. The Afro-Exim Bank has a whole tranche of money for the development of cultural and creative industries. Jamaica hasn't even signed on to it. There's so many things that need to be done that can take us to a global space. So we developed a number of areas, 15 areas, which are important to all creatives, that we would programmatically now start to roll out through an entity. So these are just some of the things that we've been thinking about and planning for. And that takes us through the 5 Gs: nurturing greatness, sustainable goals, going for growth, good governance, and going global. Those 5 things as a strategy is how we see moving cultural and creative industries forward as possible. And within them are programs and projects and activities and, infrastructure development and, all of those things. But that's the kind of big picture of how we are approaching cultural and creative development. Development.
What do you say to those who will listen to you and say that this is all political? You've been there, done this before. didn't do what you had to do. If someone were to say that to you, what is your response?
Say that to me personally,
To you
that
personally?
we okay, that we've been there, we done that, and we were about to do more when the election happened, and the government changed. So let me backtrack a little bit. In 2006, I went to work with Minister Portia Simpson Miller as her special assistant at the Office of the Prime Minister. And I'd always been interested in cultural and creative industries. I was doing her logistics. So I told myself, yes, you're still in the sector. You're still doing logistics and travel and, content management. From then, I was speaking about the cultural and creative industries to her. Two gentlemen, Clyde Mackenzie and Lloyd Stanbury, came to her one day, said, Deborah, you have to get us a meeting with her. We got the meeting. Josanne Leonard of Trinidad was also there. And they started to say to her, Prime Minister, you have to do a council. It has to be at the, you have to chair it. It has to be important. It seemed to be important enough that they got the Prime Minister is responsible for it. She was keen. She was like, absolutely, let's do this. First election happened, she lost the election. The PNP lost the election in 2007. We're back in 2012. 2012, I returned to the OPM and we picked up and I said to her, PM, remember this thing that you had agreed to do and you had announced in your budget in, I believe it was '07, that was going to happen. And she said, go ahead, run with it. And I went to the PS and she said, okay, let's do it in this way. And it has to be participatory, it has to be representative. So we designed that project. We came up with the NCCIC. We came up with a framework. We had a policy framework at that time. Everything that is being rolled out now, everything that has been rolled out in the last 10 years is in that policy framework. Yeah? In 2016, when the government changed, we handed it over. The files moved from the Office of the Prime Minister. We got 3 posts, a manager's post and 2 additional posts. I applied for those posts myself, right? And out of that came what we call Jamaica Creative in the new government. Yeah. Those posts were used to form what we now call Jamaica Creative. But the board, the participatory governance side of it was never reconvened. So in December, we got those posts, and in January was the election. So I will say to you clearly that I'm not holding on to this thing about you were able to do when you were there, because we were doing. In addition to which, there were some important projects that were coming out of the Ministry of Entertainment with Damian Crawford that
yes,
are still now being implemented, the special economic zones, etc. And there were some important projects too in the Ministry of Culture. Let's be clear. There were things like the culture passport, where young people were given a literal passport and they could use it to go to heritage activities. And that was a very good program, because again, it goes back to our nurturing greatness. So it was coming together under the council, which was now supposed to be operationalized through this unit with the 3 posts. And then the election was called. So
and
we're
unfortunately, the policies often change with change in government, or focus, I should say.
They so do.
I want you, for any of our younger people who are listening, I'd really love for you to define culture in a Jamaican context and how that understanding of it has evolved over time.
In a Jamaican context, I would say culture is liberty. Culture is the way in which we live. And I draw on the Rastafarian creed, and I know that there are those who may be upset by that Rastafarian creed, but no matter how you worship or who you worship, the notion of liberty should be at the center of our of how we want to see ourselves, because liberty speaks to a kind of upfulness. It speaks to a dignity. It speaks to that issue of being little but being Talawa. But I'm not stuck at Talawa. I want us to be transcending Talawa. That is my thing going forward. I'm very clear. It is time for Jamaica to transcend Talawa. We're tired of being resilient. Yeah? This notion of resilience is not a place to stop. It's the place to get past. And that is where I think we need to be going. So anybody who's stopping us at a place of, yes, we're strong and resilient, is not looking for a future for all of us to thrive, to literally thrive. And I think the cultural and creative industries are at the center of that. Because at the center of that liberty and that hopefulness is how we think, how we feel, how we behave, how we act, what we do, what we say it, how we sing it, how all of those things. Yeah. And so for us to move towards that liberty, we're going to have to work together and kind of come up with a vision and be clear that this is what we want our children and our children's children. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, I would encapsulate it in liberty.
Give thanks, Deborah. I think that's actually, I've never thought of it that way, but I think it's a beautiful way to express our culture. And
Thank
why
you.
not use the gift we've given the world, the other gift, which is Rastafari? But as you were speaking, I thought to myself of the arts and the important role of the arts in national identity and development. What have we done? What are we doing, or what could we do to ensure that generations to come understand this importance?
Okay, so this now goes to our definition of what we see as the cultural economy. And for our definition and our inclusion, what we've been working with over the past year as we've been doing this work is that we have 20 sectors. So cultural and creative industries is an ecosystem. And even though there may be an emphasis on film and there may be an emphasis on music, it cannot happen without the rest of the ecosystem. Because coming out of that ecosystem, you get the spirit of the stories that we need to be telling. And those stories are found in books. Those stories are found in oral traditions. Those stories are found in all of the various texts that we know that we have. So film and music can't happen without those stories at the core. And those stories are artistically presented through the various media that are used. Our artists are doing remarkable work, and we have a whole cadre of young artists who are emerging who just need a little attention. They need a little spotlight. So in our going global segment, there must be a place for them to help them to find the markets, to identify those places in Europe and Africa and Asia that want to see Jamaican work and will embrace it. Yeah. There's I have a story. I have a good friend, a very good friend. Um, she and I were colleagues, and she has a husband who's an artist. And they lived in Jamaica, and he couldn't find his footing. And you know when a man can't find his footing in the Jamaican space, and he just couldn't, it wasn't working because there was nothing for him. There was no foundation as a fine artist, a remarkable fine artist. And they
Mm-hmm.
moved away to a space where he was then facilitated as an artist. And if you saw this human being grow and blossom, and if you saw his art grow and blossom, just because he was in a space that facilitated his work. Too many of our people have to move away to come back, to grow and blossom. Why can't we create the space for them in Jamaica where they live? Yeah? To be able to grow and blossom. Why can't we create that enabling environment for them? Yeah, and that is that. That is where I see our art and our artists in the midst of an ecosystem, because one piece cannot operate without the other piece, right? And so it's important that we see it in that way. It's an organic, living, breathing process of development. And our painters and our poets and our dramatists and our thespians, all of them have a place, both in the identity formation side, but also in economic
Mhm.
development side. And that's another thing, we see the two things as separate. Economy is different. Economy and entertainment is different from culture and development, and they're not, because it's a continuum. The culture development, identity, and so on feeds the economy. It provides the stories that we're going to tell and produce and find, ways in which to sell and distribute. So you can't have one without the other. And that's another change factor that we want to bring to the process, that there's a continuum of culture into entertainment and into wealth creation.
Do you think, well, I have to say this because I always look at Caribbean writers in particular and how,
Mm-hmm.
for some reason, they seem to have to leave the space in order to write about the space with a different kind of external eye. And as you spoke about your good friend who migrated and thriving elsewhere, I wonder if that kind of assisted in that, but not negating the fact that we need to create an environment that allows artists to thrive through nurturing. So
Yeah.
where I wanted
Go ahead.
you where I wanted to go to was, I know, I think everyone who ever talked to you understand how you feel about cultural policy. I'm not sure if all our powers feel the same way about cultural policy and the importance of policy to our growth. How do we break that?
I have spent the last 2007 to 2025, do the months, in that kind of space. Maybe even more, because I was the convener of the first Entertainment Advisory Board in 2001, actually. So I've been around this cultural policy space for a long time. And one of the hardest things has been kind of convincing those that are making decisions that cultural and creative industries is is important where there is scarcity and there are priorities. And I always ask my class, if you were a prime minister and you were faced with the problem of 10 finding 10 CAT scan machines and investing in cultural and creative industries, and it wasn't that you couldn't do both, which would you choose? Well, clearly there are some decisions that have to be made, right? um, However, I think there needs to be a process by which the issues of vision and imagination, uh, and it's not even vision and imagination. Let's look back at the history and success of our cultural and creative practitioners. Not all of them became superstars, but those that were even able to pull themselves out of the most humble of circumstances, the most dastardly living conditions, and bring themselves to a level of dignity where they can bring others up. If you look at the last 100 years, there have been scores of those, hundreds of those, and that's development and that's growth. And so we kind of have to put it in, have to package the message in that sort of way to say, and that's one of the things that I've been doing. We've been doing this series called Culture Trot, and we've been going into various constituencies. And one of the reasons that I thought that that was important was that if you go into a constituency and you say, look at what you have, look at it. You probably haven't even thought about it. But look at what is possible. Yeah? And it's right here. It's been here for hundreds of years in some cases. And and I think there are many people who are coming around to it. But then you get detained with the perspective that culture is a risk, and these people are informal, and it's heart wrenching when when you see that those who should be leading you towards something that is so blatantly obvious to the rest of us have blinkers and blinders. And
Mm-hmm.
I suppose you have to, yeah, there has to be a process of pulling them to it. But if they don't see it, there are others who do. And we have to move in the direction of those who do.
I I can't help myself. Sometimes Michael is in the background, but because he stays in the back doing all of the tech things that I cannot do, he's hearing everything. And I have to share a comment from him. Beyonce Beanie cannot be the benchmark for success. Making a living and freedom and support to create and produce should be the benchmark. I looked at it and I smiled because too often when we talk to non-industry, and I mean people who are kind of on the outside, they say
Mhm,
that Jamaica is doing great and we have a successful music industry, for instance. And I
mhm,
always remind them that we really have some successful artists and perhaps
mhm,
some successful producers and event managers, but we do not really have a successful industry because I don't
mhm.
know if everyone in it's thriving that way. How you feel about that? Do I make sense or I'm chatting nonsense?
Absolutely. We will be able to claim a successful industry when we have the sustainable throughput of successful artists. And success is not superstardom necessarily. Success
Mm-hmm.
may be the ability to work in the area that they absolutely love and make a living beyond that can allow them to live the lives that they want to live. Success is not it success is going to do the kind of work that you want to do at a university like Edna or in the courses that I teach, and not being told, so we're going to do with that, because there really is no end game. And when my third years are having anxiety attacks because they've come through the 3 years, and then they're like, oh my God, what do I do now?
What am I
Right?
going to do?
And and having learned about cultural policy and having learned about what needs to happen, and they look around them, and it's so different. The ones who come from Barbados, they're good. They go home and they implement. The ones who come from St. Vincent, I spoke to one yesterday, go home and implement. They have a kind of enabling environment. Grenada is creating their enabling environment. The ones here, are still second guessing their choices because of the environment that exists. And that's why people will go to Edna, and in their second year, they will get a job on the North Coast or touring in a band, and they'll take it because, a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. And so we need to create that environment. That is success. That's a successful music industry or a successful creative industry when people can literally matriculate through the system. We're going to a music class at a primary school level. Your mother don't have to find a little extra money to send you to the music teacher down the road. Yeah, that it's natural. I spoke at a thing with Leroy siblings. Sorry, I'm getting excited. And I said, just the issue of music appreciation. How are we going to expect our music sector to create music if they've never heard anything beyond that which is played in their immediate environment? They're not clear about other types of music, other forms of music. They have not been taught how to analyze music. And I'm not talking about deep analysis at university level. I'm speaking about recognizing a Leroy Sibley's baseline, are recognizing how to break down music and how to listen to music. Because that's one of the things I learned at my grandmother's music school as a child. Being able to listen to music and so you can hear the bass line different from the piano track, different from, but that's appreciation and it's taught.
Mhm.
The only way we're going to build up a sector that is creating phenomenal music. I heard a famous music producer say the other some time ago, talent. Everybody talk about this whole heap of talent. That's
That sound like Nike.
I never want to name him, but
No,
yeah,
him not afraid for say that. That's how your friend
yeah,
Mikey
like
then.
it's like this whole heap of talent that people say. I'm in the business trying to find people, and I don't see people who are able to analyze, music and being able to kind of break it down, and then build it back up, you know.
Mhm.
So and it's not. I'm not talking about. I'm really not talking about an advanced program. I'm really talking about a program that starts with our 3-year-olds dancing. Just dance, listen to the music and dance. And
You
then,
know,
our,
Deborah,
mhm.
the thing you said, I don't want to forget, and I want you not to forget your point about the 3-year-old and dance. But the 3-year-old, we think a lot about instruments and what it would cost to get instruments in school. But what you just shared is for us to really open our minds a bit to say that we can teach music without the instruments because we
Then
can
hi,
play it.
you
And
know,
that is
remember
when it's
the drinks box with with the stones in them, and it became a castanet.
a
You don't
shaker.
remember
Mhm.
that? And a shaker, yeah. And when with the different things that you put them together and they clap.
I'm going to get me
Sticks.
shaker.
We used to have a little instrument with sticks. A little orchestra with sticks that, yes, and
Like
we make and we make
how
music.
difficult is this to make? When we think about it, a friend of mine told me that, Coleen, me love you, but you don't know how to shake. I was at a bingy and somehow I wasn't getting the rhythm, and she pointed
You
it
know
out.
that's another thing, Colleen, that's important. It's something that we are taught. We can't assume that we can keep a rhythm. How we gonna assume that if we aren't taught? That is why in music theory you have 4/4 time, 2/4 time, 1 2 1 2, 1 2 3 4, 1 2 3 4. It's a theoretical mode, but it's really being taught to keep time.
Yeah.
And we have to
Yeah. You
start
know,
teaching some of these things in school and right throughout school, like physical
but then,
education.
so we when I think about it, because a visual artist, different artisans are making these things. So we can
Hmm.
also even extend where the money is going in the economy, and we're not
Hmm.
after import no blasted recorder. I can say
Mm.
that we're not on national radio or TV. So we don't have to be importing a recorder. We can use kind of instruments that are more indigenous to this space. But
Hmm.
I know that we are not having these conversations enough because the truth is, and most people in the industry who are not on stage will tell you that it makes them uncomfortable to speak the truth or what is their truth or what their perceptions are because it's going to be taken and repackaged and you get blacklisted and you don't get no make no money. But when you talk about what we could do with 3-year-olds, I want you to talk about the Edna Manley College, the University of the West Indies, the Michael, all of the spaces that can train people in these things. But what we
Yeah.
hear about recently, Deborah, is that we're now creating an entertainment school for the tourism industry. I felt that it was backward. I felt like it was a little insular. I don't know how to describe it, and perhaps I don't have to put you in a spot to even comment
No,
on
no,
that.
that's not a spot. I love spots. I mean, put it this way. So you've asked about three questions. So the first
Yeah.
one, about people who are unable to find their voices. You see, this interim period that we call the neoliberal period, in which we have got the change in what we call music and what we call artistry. Um, People's voices, you started to use their voices in different ways. Let me put it that way. And people started to use their voices in ways that were individualistic, that could suit them, could make them a quick buck, could move in a particular direction. And I think we need to get to a point where we realize that no man is an island, and that we need to kind of have that we need to use those voices for communal good. The second part of that you spoke about is the issue of people being blacklisted and being, not being shut out. I am the queen of blacklist, right? I've been completely blacklisted in many ways. I've had international organizations send money to particular places and request me to do particular work. And it is so strung out that they have to send the money back to the place because it comes to the end of the time and the program is not implemented. So I don't want anyone to tell me that it's just a figment of our imagination because I've lived it. Yeah. I think we need to get to a point where, as we get beyond this individualism, that we realize that the things that we do are not for ourselves. I have two nephews and one niece. One is a dancer, one is a photographer and poet, and the other one is a designer, right? All teenagers. The three of them are not to go through the same things that I went through as a cultural and creative industries practitioner. And I'm going to use my voice to ensure that even if I'm blowing in the wind, even if people are rolling their eyes as I speak, even as people are plotting for my demise, and I'm not speaking literally, I'm speaking figuratively, I'm still going to say the things that I have to say, and I'm going to still say them in the voice that I say them. And people who insist that there is that temerity and audacity. This is my country, and I'm going to say that I'm my father's child and my mother's child. And unfortunately, I'm going to say the things in the ways in which I'm going to say them. I am encouraging more people to have the courage of their convictions because it's their futures. It's their futures. So that moves us now to the question that you asked about what I call cultures of expedience, Coleen. We've had some very good programs put in place in the last 5 years after COVID. There's been an effort to regenerate the entertainment registry. It's still not defined. People are still confused and they're not clear. So that means that, yes, you're doing projects, but you're not doing them well. Another one is the entertainment insurance. Very good. Important for those who don't have insurance. It's an important project. But if there's no sustainability plan for the project, yes, you're doing good work. Yes, you're doing work, but you're not doing it well. So you implement a special entertainment zone, and you just open it up and you cut a hole in the heritage site wall, and you bulldoze all of the environment around it. You don't speak to the community, and you open it up. It's a field. There are no facilities, nothing there that would make it an entertainment zone. So yes, it's an important project, but it's not being done well. And that takes us to the school. I know that there are people who need to be trained and there need to be throughput on the Western Belt to get them into the hotels to perform. I suggest that we're doing things backwards. And I suggest that when you have a graduating class of 4 dancers at the end of Manley College, then it is clear that we are not we're not expanding on something that is working. We are taking away resources from something that needs to be built. And Edna Manley College has the capacity to create short-term courses. Edna Manley College also has the capacity to take its individuals, its faculty, into a space to teach all the things like cabaret on a short-term basis.
Mm-hmm.
When you have an academy that is evolving, that does not, as I understand it, have a curriculum, that's an announcement, that's a press release, that's not a sustainable activity. Yes, you are doing something that's important, but you're not doing it well. And it's a waste of resources. It is there's an absence of vision. It is expedient. And I've given you four. There's a fifth. You have a career day for students. And there's no student support or processes of matriculation. You have, these schools, there you can go pick up a brochure, but there's no process by which you can have the students matriculate or plot a clear path for their career. Yeah, you get wonderful stories, and you get an idea of what the future holds, but the development part of it is missing. Yes, you're doing important things, but you're not doing it well. And there are ways to do it well, and they're not hard, and some of them don't cost a lot of money.
And you know, Deborah, I worked at Edna.
Yeah.
I worked at Edna. Well, Michael did too, for a couple of years. I probably did what, 11 years? Some longer. And one of the things that I loved was their open days. The open days where students from across Jamaica would go in, but it wasn't just to pick up a brochure, it was students going into a dance studio and working through movements, working through choreography, going through School of Drama and understanding the intricacies of theater, having not just faculty speak to them, but experiencing it through students who are current students. And for me, I can't understand how that is not supported. So what a ministry does is go and do something else that looks sexy. And you get some pretty face people who are the smaller successes in the industry. And that's what you show to the students. And you kind of feed them a lie, because where are you telling them to go? So I think there's so much we have to do, so much we have to come to terms with. And so what I want to ask from you is, where do we go? Whoever is in power,
Whoever it
politically.
is, and you're perfectly right. It can go either way. I am hoping that it goes in the way of progress. Essentially, what needs to happen is there needs to be a reevaluation of the direction that we wish to take, and there needs to be a refashioning of and I'm not just talking of a particular ministry. I'm talking about a system of governance. So, for example, this notion of emerging industries and matching emerging industries and focusing on specific ones is a very novel way of moving the governance forward. And then allowing for cultural and creative industries to have, and sport and digital, to have a very specific development trajectory, planned development trajectory. Yeah, that's the direction that we need to go in. It can't be arbitrary. I hear this thing about we do things deliberately. Deliberate can still be arbitrary. And we need to move beyond arbitrary. We need to move beyond Talawa. And like I said, there are some of the things that need to be done that, although we need the large infrastructure issues, so we need to have the spaces sorted, which will require capital budget. we also need to be dealing with the nurture on the other end. That takes a lot less. So things like the junior center that is at the Institute of
Institute of
Jamaica.
Jamaica.
A
Yeah,
remarkable program, year,
it
decades
is.
old. Why can't we build on that and take it around the country? Why can't we have SDC and JCDC working together in communities? Why can't I? It's beyond me. With existing budgets and and developing programs that have been around for years. An old friend of our family, Sheila Graham, tells me that in 1990 something she was named on on a council that was developed by Michael Manley. Why is it so hard? Why is it so hard?
Why do we think that the new things that are not new are novel?
Well
But
said.
Deborah, there is much to say. Sometimes I feel like we could get a round table of all the people who are comfortable talking. Um, and sometimes, frankly, I just think that people should stand down. So when a tourism enhancement fund engages you the week of their launch or the week before to say that we are building this and we want your involvement, tell them no. I just think at some stage you just stop and say, let us go back to the drawing board. Unfortunately, an announcement has been made and we're trying to make it pretty, but it's okay to say to the people that we erred and we really want to review. I think
Mhm.
that could happen. But before we go, I wanted you to think about a young person. You mentioned your nephews and niece and what
Mhm.
they're doing. For any
Mhm.
of them who may want to enter cultural and creative industries, what do you say to them?
I would say make sure you're doing it for the right reason. I would say ensure that you train yourself. I would say get a mentor. Again, going back to that discussion at Cockatoo T's funeral, Coffee had a mentor. Yeah, Coffee
Mhm.
had. She also went to an arts facing school. These things
And
are
in high
important.
school.
Are then high school. Yeah. Um, so if you're serious about it, hold on to it. Do not be deterred. Find a mentor, find your path, chart the path, ask questions, go to the places where there are people who can answer questions for you. Go and do the research. Take a trip up to UWI, take a trip to UTech, take a trip to Edna Manley, find the communication school, find the culture school, find the performance school, ask the questions of people who are there, and plot your path. Some of it may be here, some of it may be abroad, but don't give up on it. Don't give
Mhm.
up on it because it's here that the success starts, right in here.
Well, I know, thank you. I know research doesn't stop for you. I know work
No,
doesn't
never,
stop for you. I
never,
know
never, never.
advocacy doesn't stop for you. But
No, no.
what are you working on in right now?
Right now, I have about three articles. I have one that is charting the kind of history of the cultural economy in Jamaica. That's one set of research that I am completing. Another one is I am formulating our approach to policy because I've been blessed to go around the Caribbean and I've been training different people in different governments, ministries of culture, in how to implement some of their cultural policies. I actually go to one this year where I'm actually developing the implementation plan for another Caribbean island territory. So that continues. And
Mhm.
if I don't do it here, I'll do it elsewhere. And it's always exciting to be involved in the process of it's so new, it's so fresh, it's so refreshing. It's about bringing out of a nation who they are and bringing it to the fore. It's like putting them in a mirror, and that is the exciting part of it for me. It's about saying, look in the mirror. this is what you see. What can it be? What can it be? And for me, that's the most exciting part of my work. Wherever I do it, however I do it, whenever I do it.
Give thanks. How do we find you? For those who may not have your number, what are your socials?
Oh
LinkedIn.
my goodness gracious. Everything is Deborah Hickling-Gordon, or there is also PNP Culture Speak. You can find me on PNP Culture Speak, on various places. So Deborah Hickling-Gordon for the work that I do that is academic and global. PNP Culture Speak for the political advocacy that I'm now involved in.
Thank you. Thank you, Deborah. I'm
It's
also
been,
I'm very heartened by how comfortable you are with politics. I
you
wish
know,
one it's a nice comfort.
well, it wasn't always so because at this neoliberal period when people were told you can't speak about these things, and I've come to a place where I recognize that politics is about ideology, it's about your belief system. And I guess
Mhm.
as you get older, you'll get more entrenched in your belief system. And I know what I believe, I know what I want, I know what I see, and I know where we can go. And I know how to get there. And I know that's not modest in any way. But I think I've worked a number of the things through as to how the pieces fit together, how the dots connect. And so I'm anxious to share it.
Give thanks. I'm going to have a little fun with you. We're a little over time. Michael soon tell me so, but I'm going to have a little fun. Um, what was your favorite song as a child before you got to 15?
Before I got to 15, Somewhere Over the Rainbow.
Somewhere over that somewhere over the rainbow.
That's
Why?
what.
What make?
I learned it at school, and it's just a beautiful song. It's a song of hope. It was just a song that kind of brightens up the sky, literally, right? So yeah, it was.
And when you were in high school, like probably fifth going sixth form, what became your favorite song?
At that time, I was, oh my goodness, the first record that I bought, my father took me to a shop to buy my first 45, and it was hot, shot, hot. Oh, it was at the height of the disco movement. I don't remember the name of it, unless it's named Hot Shot. But
And today, what's in your player at home?
what is in my play? Oh my goodness! You know, my very favorite song of this moment is Harold Butler's Part One of My Life. It is the most beautiful piece of music, and it's a piece of Jamaican music, and it is so nuanced, and it shows us that Jamaican music is diverse. We have lots of forms of Jamaican music, and that my Harold was taught by my grandmother. He was taught piano by my grandmother. I can hear him playing chromatic scales as a young Casey boy. But that's my favorite piece of music. It's Jamaican, it's of us, and it is almost an aspiration.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. And what
You're
you
welcome.
know, tell me nothing about dancehall. You know like dancehall?
I love dancehall. I love, but you see, I'm a 90s girl. I love the dancehall of the 1990s. I love the bujos and the shabarangs and and Coco T evolving, and that's the era, and Ghost, and those are that's the dancehall that I know and remember, and kind of got the weight, and the waist was a little more wiry at the moment. It's never been wiry, but it was more wiry, right? And that was what the waist got the waist going. But and yes, and I was an entertainment journalist at that time, so I was able to do a lot of to be interfacing with all
Covering.
the shows, and Rebel Salute and Sunsplash and Sunfest and so on. So I was kind of in that world for a little while. So yes, man, I do love dancehall. I do love dancehall. Some of it these days gives me pause, but I recognize that we have a responsibility. Yeah, that all of us in Jamaica have a responsibility to determine what we want.
I muted myself. I
Yes,
was saying thank you so much for all that you do for culture. I see that you get a lot of joy doing it as
I
well. So I'm
do. I
happy
do.
that you are passionate about it. Reggae Online is honored to have you on, and we hope you can
I am
always come
pleased
on.
to hear. Yeah, man, absolutely. Just call me. Just call me.
Thank you
Thank you,
so
Coleen,
much.
and thank you, Mike.
And for all our viewers, remember that you can go to Reggae Online for a number of courses that are available. www.reggae-on-line.com, and you will see that you can also check out the Rockers Book Club. They do a book monthly and have a group discussion about it. If you look on the screen, you can see Linktree/Reggae Online. There is also the Talawa podcast with Michael Sean Harris, Michael Holgate, and Neil Ebanks. Three wonderful creatives that you can also tune in and be free to send your thoughts about the Lounge Lime with me, about the Talawa table, about the Rockers Book Club, and any of the courses. There are some wonderful courses. Gerd with his reggae, it's what, fundamentals? It kind of like that, but on a certain name. We have Jeff Menzies who teach you to do instrument making. We have drumming classes, reggae rudiments with Gerd Byrne. So there are quite a number of courses. There is Fabian Thomas with the Bob Marley and his music. So all of those you can check out. And please keep tuning to Lounge Lime. We will see you not next week Monday, but the following Monday. And we want to just thank our guest, Dr. Deborah Hickling-Gordon, for
Yeah,
sharing with
I'll take,
us
I'll
this
take
evening.
Gordon
You take
Hickling.
it anyway. Any
Yes,
one of
because my
them.
mother was Gordon Hickling.
Oh, wow. Big up yourself, yeah, Carl. For those men who have strong wives, you have to be strong men. Michael, take me out before I say anything else.
Please.